and all the college authorities, principal, vice principal, HOD, for giving me opportunity to express my views in the very relevant topic of the today's, that is EMI issues of power electronic system. I hope, sir, you can see my slide and hear my voice clearly, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, okay, fine. So this is my very burning topic of EMI EMC, electromagnetic interference and compatibility. So let us first see what do you exactly mean by EMI EMC, because it may not happen that every faculty might have worked on, or every person has working on this particular topic. So it is my duty to introduce the topic in a very systematic way, and then we can see the what are the different issues related to this in a typical power electronic systems. So this is my flow of discussion. First, I will introduce EMI EMC. Then, what are the different EMI EMC standards which people are referring? Then, what are the different type of testing methods for electromagnetic interference and compatibility? So, which are the different methods which are very popularly used in industry today? Also, I have taken two case studies, because without case studies the topic is has got no relevance, because only theoretical discussion has got no meaning. So many of my PhD students and MTech students who worked on the this particular area. So I have taken two case studies for the discussion. One is on the Prestige cooktop, which is a very good power electronic system, a commercial domestic system, which is available at every house. And the second case study I have taken on SMPS, which is also very important in today's scenario, because SMPS and the UPS forms a basic element today in the society and in the domestical as well as the all the condition. And then we have got analysis of these two systems in the laboratories, and a lot of results we have obtained. And again, the publication is there for these two equipments already in the IEEE Explorer. So I have taken these two case studies which are most appropriate one. Okay, so this is the flow, and let us first see what do you mean by EMI MC. Now, EMI stands for electromagnetic interference, and it is because of any electric or magnetic emission from a device or a system, which can be electric system, which can be electronic system, which can be a wireless system, right? And that radiation or emission can hamper the normal operation of the another device which is in the vicinity, or even it can impact on the human being health also. It has been proved now that continuous exposure to the radiated emission, because we are now staying in a very dense surrounding radiated environment. A lot of cell towers, more than 2 lakh cell towers in the country, lot of RF towers, lot of television towers, right? So they have got non-ionizing and ionizing effects on the human body. So you might have read somewhere that because of this so and so things are happening, because of this so and so things are happening. Anyway, but that is not the today's discussion. But electromagnetic interference not only affect the electronic systems or electric systems, but it also affects the human being and biological systems, and that is concern point about that particular interference. And second point is electromagnetic compatibility. So electromagnetic compatibility is the ability of a device or a system to function without any error, or without hampering its functionality, or without altering its parameters in a dense EMI environment. So that is what we call it as electromagnetic compatibility. Your equipment, whatever we have designed, a electrical equipment or electronic equipment or a wireless equipment, should work satisfactorily in a dense EMI environment. Simple thing you can just notice, whenever we take mobile very nearby to television, what happens? The screen get disturbed, and lot of sound comes from the speaker. This is one good form of interference. Or if somebody is starting the vehicle, two-wheeler, outside the house, and it may happen that it may disturb your television picture raster, These are the two typical, form of electromagnetic interferences. If your equipment performs well within the dense EMI environment without affecting its functionality or without affecting its electrical parameters, then we can say that that equipment is said to be compatible with the particular standard of EMI EMC. So that is what we call it as compatibility. So two issues where we have to discuss. One is interference and the second is compatibility. Interference is any unwanted radiated emission from a device. Even mobile radiates a lot of signal, so there is a lot of unintentional radiation also. So that is what we call it interference. And compatibility means the ability of the equipment, maybe electrical, maybe electronic, maybe wireless, or maybe instrumentation based equipment, to perform satisfactorily in a dense EMI environment. So we need to create this dense EMI environment in the laboratory and try to see what is the effect of that environment on the equipment. So I'm going to show you all these test setups and practical setups where we have worked and we are still working on that. So I think this is the first discussion which will tell you about the basic definition of EMI EMC. Right. Now let us go to second slide. So first two already I have explained. Now there are four different types here. One is emission and second one is immunity. So electromagnetic compatibility can be analyzed whether a particular device or equipment or say product is compatible with EMI/EMC standard of that particular thing or not. That can be identified by using these four basic criteria. Number one is emission test, that is radiated emission and conducted emission. So radiated emission is amount of electromagnetic energy radiated by the device in space. So we can measure that with the antennas and we can compare it with the standard, how much radiation the equipment is basically giving. And second one is conducted. Now, we are connecting a lot of cables to the equipment like a power supply cable, RF cable, antenna cable, or there can be n number of cables which can be connected to the equipment. So even the radiation passes to the cable also, and that cable radiation will destroy your power supply. I mean, not destroy exactly, but it will impact on your power supply section. So a lot of, suppose you connect 100 computers on a bus of power supply. So to the ground or to the line neutral, you will have a lot of conducted emission which is going from computer to the supply line. And so it may happen that the neutral may not be exactly lying at zero voltage because of this noise, or even this noise can interfere with other devices. Okay, and so it can impact on the other devices, and the other devices will basically hamper their functionality, or it may hamper their electrical parameters also. So this is first category, emission, in which radiated and conducted. These are the two types. And immunity, now exactly reverse. Suppose I am creating this dense noisy environment in a lab, then your equipment should perform satisfactorily. That is what we call immunity or compatibility. So here there are two types again, continuous immunity and transient immunity. Continuous means you can check the equipment, you introduce some kind of radiation, RF radiation on the equipment, or you introduce RF noise to the cable. In both the condition, equipment should work satisfactorily. Or you can inject the transients, and that these transients can also create a lot of problems to the processors and the sensitive part of the equipment. They can damage the equipment, and so this is another part that is called as a transient. So when I say I want to analyze the electromagnetic compatibility, I need to carry out these four investigations: radiated emission, conducted emission, then immunity, continuous and transient, immunity through space, and immunity through cables. Okay, so this is, I think, the second part of the standards and the electromagnetic test. Now, Somebody will ask me the question, which are the general sources of EMI in power electronic systems? Uh, Actually, today's burning topic is electrical vehicles. So a lot of equipments are there in electrical vehicle which can radiate a lot of electromagnetic interference. But still, since today's topic is related to power electronic systems, uh, there can be n number of power electronic systems which we are using in our day-to-day life, and many of this we have already analyzed as a part of the research work. So SMPS, switching mode power supply, or a linear regulated power supply. Wherever I have seen many people are struggling to reduce the noise, reduce the radiated emission level below the standard, especially in the defense sector, because defense standards are very strict as compared to the domestic or commercial standards or industrial standard. So many people are working and struggling on the power supply to minimize the radiated emission, minimize the conducted emission, that kind of things. Okay, so SMPS, UPS, power supply, I think these are the integral part of our industry, electrical or electronic industry. Everywhere there is a requirement of UPS, the SMPS, the power supply. Now, SMPS and UPS, the switching frequency, okay, plays a very critical role. I have seen many switching frequency and its components that is creating a lot of problems in the radiated emissions. So one needs to work on the switching frequency. One needs to work on the designing of the, curtailing this particular radiated components based on the switching frequency. So that is the main thing. Or crystal oscillators, which are used in the many of electronic devices, they also create a lot of radiations. Okay. Then induction cooktop. Now this is a case study actually we have taken, and one is SMPS. These are the two case studies, investigation reports in the national laboratories we will be discussing. We have also worked on other things also, but due to time constraint, it may not be possible to discuss everything. Even we have worked on microwave ovens, a lot of emission coming from the microwave oven, and these emissions are not only very bad for the equipment, but these are emissions which can be bad for the human being also. A lot of things are going in Japan to close down the microwave industry. How much it is true and how much it is false, that exactly we have not analyzed, but something is going on related to that. So cooking the food with microwave oven, and a lot of things are happening. We also try to investigate a lot of readings from the microwave oven and try to analyze what is exactly happening. Mixer and grinder, these are the rotating parts. Any motor or mixer and grinders, that also create a lot of radiated emission and conducted emissions. Geysers and heaters, these may also produce a lot of magnetic fields as well as the emissions. Of course, the frequency bands of these radiations will be altogether different. Switching power devices. A lot of power devices are being used in the industry, like thyristors are there, or SCRs are there, or IGBTs are there. Whenever you want to switch the power, a very high power, a switching creates the transients, and this can be accounted as a transient noise, or radiated noise, or conducted noise. So this transient may couple through space, or it may couple through the cables, and that can deteriorate the performance of the equipments. Yes, motor drivers and the controllers, these are the part of the electrical vehicles. So a lot of motors, because there is no fuel, everything is run by the motors. So a lot of challenges in the EMIMC in the electrical vehicles. But yes, we can also analyze them as a power electric or power electronic systems. Battery charger, simple thing, required for the batteries that can also generate a lot of conducted noise. Inverters and DC to DC converter. This is a gray area where the defense people are struggling many times to reduce down the radiation level to the standard levels. Then high voltages and non-linear components. High voltage and non-linear components, that is also creating a lot of impact in the way of transients and the other things. High voltage cable and connectors. I don't know how many of you know, but whenever we are traveling in a vehicle, and we are listening to a song on our DVD, on our radio player, and suddenly when we go to under the high power voltage line, there is a disturbance in the program. This is a very good impact of the electromagnetic interference. This happens practically. Okay. Then crystal oscillators, as already said, nowadays all the microcontroller boards, the electronic boards which can drive the power systems has got crystal oscillator to work on a controller. So this is also creating a lot of problems. So if I summarize power electronic systems, it may be more than some other equipments also which can be categorized in the industry category. But these are the things which we may come across in our day-to-day life, and really it is a challenge because uh, radiations in the wireless communication area and other sensor area are very small value, but power electronic, these are the very strong radiations because either our power is very high and therefore the radiation levels are quite high, and therefore the challenges are also very much there to curtail this radiation below certain value. Okay, so really speaking, it's a really challenging work to suppress the radiations in the power electronic system. It is not so easy. Because personally, I have got many people in the defense electronic area because I have worked in my previous experiences, and many times it took around 6 months to 1 year to solve the problem about DC-DC converter and the inverters, battery chargers, then the controllers, right? So these are the things which are very common in a defense communication circuits. Okay. One simple case I can tell you in a sonobuoy. Sonobuoy is a equipment which is thrown into the water in the sea, and then it goes down in the sea, and because of the water pressure, it opens the battery compartment, and then it start working. So it radiates the signal, and basically it and identifies the sign of the ships which are under the sea. So I worked personally on this project in my previous working experience, and we got a lot of challenges to solve about battery and DC-DC converter. About EMIMC, I am talking about. Okay, so every defense equipment requires battery, inverter, DC to DC converter, chargers, sometimes motors and controllers. So a lot of challenges are there, and people are really taking these challenges to solve the issues related to MIMC problems. And rest of the things I have taken as a case study as a general equipment like induction cooktop. We also work on microwave oven. We also work on SMPS and UPS and simple power supplies. Okay, and only thing is that in case of wireless communication devices, the radiation ranges are in a high frequency side, and here it is more or less low frequency side. So the magnetic radiations are more dominated. Low frequency radiations are more dominated in a EMI power electronic systems, whereas electrostatic radiations are dominated in the wireless communication systems, which are at very high frequency. Okay, so I think this is a summary of what case studies we can do, what kind of investigation we can carry out, and we can just study the things in the. Now, one of my PhD student who is working in ARAI, Automotive Research Association of India, he is a manager there, and he has taken topic of battery charger and the EMI in the PhD work because a lot of issues in the battery charger. There is a lot of he has identified a gap in a battery charger, which is very peculiar thing about the industry and especially for electrical vehicles. So this is a very burning area today. Okay, so a lot of things we have identified, a lot of gaps we have identified, and we can really work on these particular issues in the future. Okay, now
Excuse me, sir.
yes.
Hello, sir. Sir, could you give an example like how this electromagnetic radiation affects performance of converter
Yeah.
for
Actually,
any?
that we are taking in a case study. So I don't want to waste time on that right now. The case
Yeah.
studies are
Okay.
going to
Okay,
get
sir.
everything in clear, man.
Oh,
Right?
okay. Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Because let me cover first prerequisite, and then we are going to see actual case studies. Right? Okay. So now coming to the next point, and that is EMIMC standards. Coming to next point is a EMIMC standards. So there are various EMIMC standards which are being used by the people. A simple automotive vehicle standards applicable to electrical vehicles and automotive vehicle, that is one standard. Then CISPR standard, International Special Committee on Radio Interference, that is what we call it as a CISPR standard. Then FCC standards, Federal Communication Commission standard, internationally accepted upon, and the military standard, that is MIL 461E. These are the few standards which we need to compare. We need to compare the performance of our equipment with respect to these standards. And as we go ahead, the standards severities are growing to a great extent. So we first CISPR commercial in domestic standard is very so you can say lenient. उसके बाद में FCC is very stringent and military is the most stringent one. So automotive are medium stringent standards. So these are the various EMIMC standards. So these are the different standards which we can refer for comparing the performance of the devices with the particular parameters, like CISPR 12, CISPR 16 1-1-4, CISPR 25. That is the most commercial and common domestic standard for the power electronic systems as well as for the vehicles. Then CISPR 14-1, 14-2, CISPR ISO 763-2, 7-2. These are the various standards. So when you start working in a project, in research work, you have to finalize the standard. In which category the particular power electronic system is going to be used. For example, microwave oven is there, or your washing machine is there, or maybe SMPS is there, UPS is there. So if it is fitted in the house, so you have to take domestic standard, CISPR 25. If it is in the industry, you have to take industry-based standard. If it is in the automotive vehicle, you have to get vehicular standard. If it is in defense, you have to go for defense standards. So that is the first identification, and normally the customer, the end user customer of the product will tell you which standard you have to adopt. Okay. Again, further in this line, there are a lot of ISO standards and its variations. So one needs to carefully finalize the standard on which this particular equipment you have to test. Okay. So these are the various EMIMC standards which one will have to work. So this is a one standard showing you radiated emission according to CISPR 25. So you can see x-axis frequency and the y-axis is a level of the radiated emission in dB microvolt per meter. Okay, so you subject the equipment to the radiated emission test in the chamber, try to measure the radiation and try to compare this radiation level with the standards. That also in case study we are discussing. So these are the limits now. You can see if the standard you are measuring in narrowband mode, these are the limits. If your radiated emission is going above this level, your equipment is fail in the EMIMC test. So equipment is not compatible. If you are measuring it broadband radiated emission, there are two categories: narrowband and broadband. It's a standard word used for the spectral analysis: broadband spectrum and narrowband spectrum. So depending upon that, you will get the level. For example, I can show you at the frequency of say this is 10 megahertz. You can see the standard value of radiated emission is around 60 dB microvolt per meter. That is broadband, narrowband. And same about the broadband will be say around 50 dB microvolt per meter. So your equipment, whatever you are testing, that should not radiate more than this. If it radiates more than this, you will have to work on it. You have to take out the research and try to curtail that radiation below the standard level. Again, you have to implement the technology or technique and try to test it again back so that the radiated emission levels are below the standard values. Then you can say equipment is compatible, right? So these are the first we have seen graphical representation. Now this is a tabular representation of the CISPR 15 or 25 standard. So different frequencies are mentioned and different peak level are mentioned. Okay, here. So this is just for the comparison purposes. So anything which is more than this is not acceptable. If it is more, your research work will be very, very important in that area. If the levels are already below the standard value, no research is required. So identification is to be done accordingly. So your research work should be on the equipment which are not falling in the compatibility requirements. Okay. Now somebody will ask me what are the different techniques which we have to work for mitigation of the radiation, maybe conducted or radiated. So these are some of the points where the researcher has to work. Okay. So list of techniques or methodologies, you have to implement one or many of this while taking into account the radiated emission level. So first one is the grounding. Now you know grounding is very, very important in the PCBs as well as in the chassis grounding as well as in the electrical wiring or electronic equipments. So depending upon the grounding scheme like single point grounding, multi-point grounding, you know, the radiations can be curtailed down. If your frequency of operation is below some 10 megahertz, you will go for single point grounding. If it is more than that, you have to go for multiple grounding. Okay, so grounding plays a lot of role. The way you are grounding the signals, the way you are grounding the body of the equipment, the way you are grounding the electrical say earthing of the equipment is very important. So needless to say, equipments which are on the vehicles, lot of issues comes. Equipment on the ships, on board ships, lot of issues come because there is no ground, permanent ground there as a reference. So there the challenges come more for this grounding. Filtering. Depending upon the radiation you have measured, particular frequency and its pass band, you can design a filter, radio frequency interference filter, and accordingly you can just put that filter in a power supply line or different parts of the PCB and try to curtail the radiation. The next one is the shielding enclosure. So a lot of materials which are available today in the market. So starting from aluminium, then you have got copper, then you have got stainless steel, you have got the material like mild steel. So you can design the enclosures using these materials. Even you want to have magnetic shielding, like mostly it is required in power electric systems. You have got mu metal that also you can use as a basic enclosure. So if you mount the equipments in a plastic enclosure or any other type of enclosure, it will not shield properly. So you need to design the enclosures. That is also case study I am going to discuss. PCB level design. So multi-layer PCBs will reduce the EMI problems in most of the electronic circuits, electrical circuits. So 4-layer, 5-layer, 6-layer PCBs will minimize the issues related to the EMI. And there are certain guidelines also for PCB design. So track lengths, track width, track edges, track corners, right? Then the amount of space area you want to use, then procedure of laying the track of power supply and the negative and the earth, all these things will come here. Use of conductive gaskets. So whenever you design the enclosure, even though you are putting the cover, a lot of gaps are there in the between the cover and the basic body of the enclosure. So that gaps will radiate the signal, and that is not allowed. So you can put conductive gaskets made up of silicon based or the deposited by silver or deposited by some other materials, conductive materials that you can use to bridge the gap between the cover and the basic body of the enclosure. Then conductive paints. A lot of conductive paints are available like silver paint, copper paint, or paints of the various other aluminum paints which are available. So you can just put that paints on the spray the paint on the enclosure to improve the conductivity. We'll see the relationship when I show you the MATLAB simulation of that enclosure. Then shielded cables. This is also one approach. to minimize the conducted EMI, conducted emitted radiated emission. So researcher has to work any one of these things or multiple techniques at a time to minimize the radiated emission levels. Okay, so let us go ahead now. So this is what I try to discuss already: grounding, safety grounds, the signal grounds, PCB grounds, single point and multiple grounds, hybrid grounding. All these categories you will have to work depending upon the application, depending upon the area, depending upon the frequency, depending upon the power level. Okay, filtering, design of RF filter, radio frequency interference filter. Simple thing I can tell you: suppose some crystal is radiating the emission at 11 megahertz, you can design a small cap of aluminium with proper thickness and other things and put it on the crystal and ground it from all the sides, so the radiation will be curtailed. Simple things can be done. Then shielding. So enclosures can be designed to take care of the shielding. Like, so one simulation we have done. This is for a aluminium enclosure. Uh, because this particular case, we have got very fantastic results. Why we have taken aluminium? So first of all, what is it? It was designed for a vehicle in which there was a musical infotainment system, music infotainment system, and we designed an aluminium enclosure for that. This is one theoretical case study I am just right now discussing. Why aluminium? Because basically aluminium is corrosion resistant. It is having good conductivity, low density, lightweight, good durability, mechanical point of view, then good shielding effectiveness. Copper would have been more better than aluminum for conductivity, but copper is subjected to rusting. And when we perform the mechanical strength analysis on the ANSYS software, we found better results for the aluminum. So many of the things will basically support you that go for the aluminum enclosure for equipment. Maybe any power electronic system, or maybe any kind of wireless system, or a musical infotainment system in a vehicle like this. Okay, so we have designed a aluminum enclosure. So this is the basic behind that. So we require a dimension of 290 by 190 by 120 mm aluminum enclosure. The photograph is already shown here. And initially we have taken the shielding effectiveness of 1 millimeter. Okay, and then we have used the conductive paint for coating it on the aluminum enclosure. We also use conductive gasket, then shielded cables for and EMI proof connectors for connecting all the cables and other things of this particular equipment. Okay, and then we have done MATLAB simulation on for this. Okay, so these are the parameters for simulating in the MATLAB. So initially we have done it 1 mm thickness, but it was not sufficient. So we have gone now for thickness T is equal to 2 mm, right? So these are the parameters of copper, aluminum, and mild steel: relative conductivity and relative permeability. So you will see that copper is a better conductor. Relative conductivity is 1, whereas aluminum is having 0.61, lesser than copper. But still, aluminum is better choice because of the anti-rusting properties and other things which we have discussed. Now these are the simulation formulas which one has to use for the enclosure. So first of all, when we do our research work, we have to simulate the parameters in the theoretical domain. So we have used MATLAB. So how do you measure the shielding effectiveness? You have to calculate the two losses, the absorption loss and the reflection loss. The absorption loss is given by A is equal to 3.34 T into square root of F mu r and sigma r, where T is the thickness of the material, F is the frequency of operation, mu r is the relative magnetic thing, permeability, and sigma r is a relative conductivity, right? And then we vary the frequency F from say 10 hertz to say around 5 gigahertz or 6 gigahertz. So this is absorption loss, means the amount, the capacity of the material to absorb the electromagnetic radiation and ground it. That is absorption loss. Because of that, heating is getting produced in the material. Second one is reflection loss. Ability of material to reflect the electromagnetic waves by thereby reducing the radiations. So this is reflection loss. It is given as R is equal to 168 plus 10 log sigma R upon mu R into F, where sigma R is related to conductivity and mu R is related to permeability. Now here, if you want to work on a low frequency magnetic radiation, you have to get a material like a mu metal. And if you want to work like a high frequency choice, then aluminum and copper and other stainless steel and mild steel will be okay. Okay, so this is, there are two things in a, you can say, radiated emission. One is a near field radiation and far field radiation. Now, first two formulas are catering to far field radiation. And the second near field magnetic loss and near field electric loss is for the near field radiation. If you are very close to the source, then it is near field, and if you are far away from the source, it is a far field radiation measurement. So again, these are the formulas which are used for simulation of near field electric loss and near field magnetic loss, right? So shielding effectiveness total can be calculated based on a sum of absorption loss and the reflection loss, and the C normally we text as 0, A plus R plus C. Similarly, near field shielding effectiveness, we can add electrical loss and magnetic loss, and we can calculate what is the total shielding effectiveness of that material. Or in general, a general formula, aperture formula for the shielding effectiveness can be 20 log C upon 2FL, where C is your speed of the electromagnetic wave, and F and L are the frequency and the length of that aperture. Very general formula, but most of the times these two formulas, absorption and reflection loss or electrical and magnetic loss, are taken into account. So these are the basic things which we have to first work upon if you are designing any shielding enclosure. Now this is the simulation. Now you can see here, first this is called as a absorption loss, shown by the green color. So as you see, frequency increases, absorption loss increases for the aluminum material. Reflection loss, it is high at low frequency and then it settles down at high frequency. And total shielding effectiveness is better at high frequency for the aluminum. So this is a simulation, first part, far field simulation. That is what we have seen about the aluminum. Okay. Then this is what is the say reflection loss electrical for various distances, 1 meter, 3 meter and 30 meter for same aluminum. So again we simulate that by putting the distance as 1 meter, 3 meter and 30 meter very close to the source, and we try to simulate the performance of the aluminum material for calculating the near field electrical loss. Okay, so this is MATLAB simulation of that. So this will tell you how much shielding effectiveness one can have. For example, at 100 Hertz, this will give you the adequate shielding effectiveness of around 45 dB. And if you go on at different frequencies, you will get the amount of shielding effectiveness given by the material. Okay, with whatever 1 mm, 2 mm thickness. You increase the thickness, the shielding effectiveness will be more. Okay, this is for near field magnetic loss. So at 1 meter, 3 meter and 30 meters, we will see that the shielding effectiveness given by the aluminum for now see here. So this is not a very good material for magnetic shielding. So at low frequency, the magnetic radiations are more. So here shielding effectiveness is very, very poor. But if you take mu metal here, you will get better shielding effectiveness at low frequency. Okay. Anyway, so this is the simulation part which we have carried out. Now we will be going for the lab testing. So what are the different tests which we have to carry out on the power electronic systems or any wireless system radiated emission, conducted emission, radiated susceptibility, and conducted susceptibility. So these are the 4 tests which we have to perform on any electronic or electrical equipment to assess the compatibility of the equipment. Okay. Now I will just discuss first what are the primary methods of measuring all these things. A very simple tool can be a spectrum analyzer and EMI probe. EMI probe is available around 2 lakh rupees. All the leading spectrum analyzers are having this additional facility. So in our D.Y. Patil College, we have got a Agilent Mech spectrum analyzer with pre-amplifier section with EMI probe. So in-house also you can measure the radiated emission from any device. So that result also I will show you. Then EMI precision tool. Entire PCB can be put on a machine like a Xerox machine and try to analyze which equipment or which component on the PCB gives high radiation. So you will get a very good colorful graph like ANSYS. So red will give you the alert, the blue is safe, the green is more safe. So various shades you will get from green to red by the EMC precision tool on the PCB. So immediately you will come to know which component is radiating more. Okay, of course it is near field radiation. Then open area test site, that is also one of the method to measure the radiation. Then GTEM cell, that is also a very popular method along with anechoic chambers. So GTM cells and anechoic chamber are very popular, a very close environmental methods in which the equipment is kept in the chambers and you can measure the lot of parameters or radiation from the equipments. And one more thing is simulation with EMI softwares like CAD FECO or REC Analyst or MATLAB. Like what I have shown you, the shielding effectiveness and other parameters. So these are the various methods researchers has to work on these methods, and then you can consolidate your findings from the particular method. I personally use all the methods in our research work, depending upon the requirements, depending upon the constraints, and depending upon the various things which are required. Okay. So let us go now. Somebody will say, what is near field and what is far field? So near field is if you are situating in a distance of 2d square by lambda, less than that, you are in a near field. And if you are situated beyond 2d square by lambda, you are at far field, where d is the dimension of the antenna. Okay, and lambda is the wavelength in the free space. So if you are sitting or you are having a position very nearby to antenna who is radiating, and if you compare the diameter or the dimension of the antenna and the frequency of wavelength and calculate it, if you are happens to be less than 2d square by lambda, you are at near field. And if you are having on a distance more than 2d square by lambda, you are having a far field. And again, there is a software, a lot of complex things which are available where you can convert near field into far field. Like the method which I have told you, spectrum analyzer and EMI probe and the precision tool, these are the near field measurements. So near field has to be converted to far field, right? And there are certain formulas for that. And again, simulations are required for that. Okay. Benefits of near field is that you can identify roughly what are the components which are radiating, how much they are radiating. So before going to the lab testing, you will understand which are the equipments or which are the devices which are radiating more. So it will give you just very introductory part of the radiations. So you can just predict from that what kind of improvements you have to undertake on the equipment. So this is the photograph of that particular thing. So here you can see that radiated emission measurement, how it can be measured with the spectrum analyzer and EMI probe. This is an in-house facility in our lab, D.Y. Patil. So you will see this is a probe. You just take probe nearby to the equipment and you will get the spectrums of the radiated emission. Okay. Now, when you get the spectrum, you can convert that particular level into H field, E field, and power density. Okay, so VSA is a value of the voltage you are measuring on spectrum analyzer. You can convert it with the help of AF, stands for antenna factor. It is normally given for the probe, and K is a constant. So by using the formula, you can convert those things into H field, E field, and the power density. So H stands for magnetic field, E stands for electrical field, and power density is also very, very important. Some of the standards, mostly the standards are referring to E fields, but there are certain standards which can give you H field and the power density. INC-IRP standard, that is international standards on the radiated emission, will be based on the power density. So you need to compute all these components from the spectrum. Okay. So we have used EMI probes 11940A and 11941A, and with antenna factor graphs are given at different frequency, and then we can calculate the H field, E field, and the power density. Okay, so these are the formulas which we can use in the spectrum analyzer and the measurement. Now these are the spectrums. One example I have shown on the vehicle tracking system board. There is a power supply and there is a you can say crystal oscillator in that. So this will give you a lot of radiations. You can see the radiation level by crystal oscillator at 22 megahertz, and level is minus 67.47 dBm. This is when we got the bare testing of the PCB, and when we implement with aluminum enclosure, you can see the radiation peak has been curtailed down. So there is no peak of the radiation at 22 megahertz or whatever frequency we have seen here. So ultimately I can say the aluminum enclosure was effective, and we have reduced the radiation level to a very great value. Okay, for example, the level here is minus 83.32 dBm, and here it is minus 67 dBm. So almost 20 dBm reduction was possible. dBm is basically the ratio of the power, 10 log to the base 10, the unknown power divided by 1 milliwatt. That is what we call it as a dBm. If you take dBW, it will be unknown power upon 1 watt. But spectrum analyzer normally measures on dBm or in voltage. Now, one more thing, there was SMPS on this board, and the switching frequency of SMPS was 500 kilohertz. So see here, there is a lot of radiated emission on the 500 kilohertz. So we will see minus 48.28 dBm at 500 kilohertz. I have put the marker here. So this is a output of radiated emission of the GPS board, VTS board, vehicle tracking system board, because of SMPS. And this is giving you minus 48.28 dBm. But when we put it in aluminum enclosure, this was reduced down to minus 94 dBm. So you can see all the peaks are curtailed. Now no radiation is shown by the probe. That means this is effective. So minus 48 to minus 84, so almost 45 dB reduction. So this is how you can take the first preliminary objective to test the things in the in-house labs. So this will give you a very good idea about your technology, your work. So
excuse me, sir.
Yes, please.
Sir, what should the value be for, suppose if you are having a device, what is the expected value, sir, of this dBm? In the minus dB, here it was 45. What is, say, the good value for a device, so that
now if you compare the good value, it will be different for different standards. Okay, for example, this minus 48.28 dBm value is not very good for defense standard, but if you take for the domestic standard, it is okay. Okay, so it will vary from standards to standards. So commercial standard, domestic standards, industrial standards, and the defense standards, all the in the core level, the values are different. So if I will say that this is compatible for domestic equipments, however, it is not compatible for vehicular standard. Vehicular standard will say that the value should be less than minus 55 dBm. And that is what we achieved here, because this VTS board was a part of vehicular system. Okay, so if we don't implement enclosure, this is basically going to be not a very good proposition of the radiated emission, because it is minus 48.28 dBm. It is very high for vehicular standard. But when we implement enclosure, it was curtailed down to minus 94 dBm. So it is very good. It is comfortable. So that way we have to compare. Everywhere, according to category, the standard values will change, right? But suppose I compare with defense standard, still minus 94 dBm can be very high for a defense standard. So we have to work again more for curtailing the radiation to minus 100 dBm level. Okay, I hope I have answered your query.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes.
Right. Okay, thank you. Now this is a tabular formation of this. So we observe the spectrum voltage. This is the third column. We can observe the dBm level, or we can observe the spectrum voltage on the spectrum analyzer, and then we can convert using the formulas already I have mentioned. So you can convert into E field, H field, and power density. So this is a field you can compare with all the standards. You don't have to compare the dBm value, because the standards are available in the E field. So if I say that last example, minus 48.28 dBm. So what is the E field corresponding to that? So if I take, this is the value, minus 48.28 dBm. So the E field is 162.20 dB microvolts per meter. So this is star mark. That means it is higher than the standard value. Already I have mentioned here, star mark is there. So it is exceeding the standard limit of vehicular technology standard. So it is not clear. It is not past the equipment. Equipment is failed. But when we implement the enclosure, then this E field was reduced to 115.56 dB microvolt per meter. Now it is okay. That means this is a safe value. Similarly, we can compute H field, magnetic field, we can find out power density, and we can compare to the standard. Mostly the E standard is compared. All the EMIMC standards are based on the E field standards, electrical field standards. Okay, and electric and magnetic fields and power density, they are correlated to each other. So anyway, in one way you can compare in the E field, automatically it will curtail. Now, secondly, you can see the regulator board, there was a radiation of at around 469.87 kilohertz, or sorry, 980 kilohertz. This is also crossing 152.93 dB microvolt per meter. This is also crossing the standard value. But after aluminum enclosure implementation, it was reduced to 127.99. That means whatever we have implemented in a research work, it is okay. Now you can further go in the detailed investigation in the lab testing. Okay, so the first delivery method is very useful for at least identifying whether what techniques we are using is okay or it is not okay. Okay, now let us go to the next one, and that is the setup for EMC precision tool. So this is a like a Xerox machine. You keep the PCB on this. There is a glass. Keep PCB on this, and then the internal antennas will measure all the radiation from the component, and you will get a layout of that. Okay, so this is also for near field measurement. The last method which I have shown, it is all near field measurement, and this is also near field measurement. Okay, so here it is available in standard laboratories like ARAI, or it is available in a laboratories like ETDC Pune or ERTL Bombay. So this laboratory will support. You take out your PCB and keep it on that, and you will see the component which is radiating more. Okay, so this is next method. So this is how it works. So the PCB is divided into different cells, and the emission from the every component will be identified, and it will be highlighted in a color. So red color, blue color, green color, that way it will be identified. Okay. Next method is OATS method, and that is basically used for open area method, in which there is a open space and you can keep the antenna there and you can measure the radiation from the device under test. But normally nobody uses this right now, because right now there are a lot of advanced anechoic chambers which are available, and in the open space there is a lot of interference from the outside disturbances also. So this method is again for only academic purposes. I mean, nobody mostly use it it can just give you the rough idea about the far field radiation from the equipment. Yes, but the next one, so working of OATS is very simple, open area test site equipment. And as I told you, it is very, very rarely used nowadays, because it was earlier method which was there for measurement of the electromagnetic interference from the equipment. Now next one is a GTM cell. Okay, so this is a chamber kind of thing. You can see here, this is a chamber, and in this chamber you open the door. There are a lot of protections in the inside, so no wave should go from inside to outside, and no wave should insert from outside to inside. So a lot of you can say microwave absorbers are there and antennas are there. So keep the equipment under this and try to measure the radiation. This is a GTEM cell way of measuring the electromagnetic radiation. Okay, so it is basically gigahertz transverse electromagnetic cell, and it is based on the basic principle of microwaves, wherein you can measure the radiation from the devices, and it has got a very big horn antennas kind of thing structure, and inside that a lot of antennas are there to collect the radiated emission from the equipment. This is also popularly used, but again, the last point which I am coming is an anechoic chamber in the testing area. So anechoic chamber, you can see it is like this. Entire car can go inside, or entire equipment can go inside, and you can subject all the 4 kind of tests in the anechoic chamber. So ETDC Pune or ARAI, Automotive Research Association of India, or you have got ERTL Bombay, ERTL Delhi. Lot of national organizations are certifying the EMIMC test. All of them are having anechoic chamber. This is a photograph of ARAI. Entire car can go inside, entire vehicle can go inside, and you will get analysis of EMI based on upon that particular car. So how much car radiates as an integrated kind of thing, that can be done. Okay, so this is called anechoic chamber, or else you can keep some small equipment in a small anechoic chamber, maybe 3 meters by 3 meters by 3 meters, and you can get the radiation from the particular equipment. So anechoic chamber is the most popular and the most accurate way of measuring the electromagnetic radiation, and also performing the other tests in the chamber. So this is the most advanced one and very costly. Now I have seen that many private people are also launched the anechoic chamber, like Minda Group is there, or maybe some other groups are there. They are also having anechoic chambers, and the testing charges are quite high. If you want it by a rental basis, 25,000 rupees per day to 50,000 rupees per day. That is what is the charges. And if you want certification, it is further to that addition of the cost. Okay, so this is anechoic chamber, you can see. Okay, so I think up to this point, I have tried to cover the basic part of EMIMC and thing. Now we will be going for the case study. Okay, so the first case study is the induction cooktop, which we have taken. Now this is a Prestige make induction cooktop, and the specification, it has got 2000 watt induction cooktop, operates on 230 volt AC and 50 hertz, right? So one of my MTech student work on this, and then we have taken request permission from ETDC Pune, Electronic Test Development Center Pune, to test this particular product as a part of research work. We don't want to go into commercials into that, but we just wanted to analyze how much radiation this Prestige cooktop can give, how much conducted emission, how much radiated emission this particular equipment can give. This is a very common power equipment which is available at mostly everybody's house, okay, for cooking purposes. So this is the first case study which we have taken. It's a Prestige make induction cooktop. Okay, so these are the specifications. Like, it has got very high power, 2000 watts, so 2 kilowatt. So whatever radiation is going to throw, it will be very, very high, especially the magnetic radiations. And this can be a very good case study for analyzing what is the EMI issues related to these equipments. So we try to do that. And so these are the specification. Now this is how it works. Basically, I need not explain this, how it works. But there is a heating and magnetic field which is produced in the induction cooktop. And this is the inside view of that particular induction cooktop. So it can generate the magnetic fields from 20 kilohertz to around 100 kilohertz to hit the pans that are placed on the cooking surface. So that is a basic working element of that particular induction plate. So we have subjected the test in the laboratory like ETDC Pune. It is a Government of India laboratory, Electronic Testing and Development Center. So we try to go with that. And okay, so what is the advantage of induction cooktop? Everybody knows that you are having faster operation. You can avoid the gas kind of things, and most and it is the most concern while cooking that the emission coming from the copper coil of the particular induction cooktop can induce to some health problems. That is what people have observed, and that motivated us to take this issue, that what kind of radiation this is giving. Okay. So yeah, so this is a test setup. Basically, we have gone to Electronic Testing and Development Center at Pune, Government of India S2QC organization. So we requested them for analyzing the investigation of the radiated emission and conducted emission in the laboratory. So this is a test setup. This is our device under test here. This is a close, you can say, we have used the GTM cell here, not the anechoic chamber. Okay, so in the GTM cell, the equipment was housed inside that. And then we try to measure the radiation from our induction cooktop in on condition. And what was the radiation that we try to measure? One thing which is required in the measurement is a line impedance stabilization network, because you must connect your equipment to the power supply through LISN, line impedance stabilization network. So LISN will isolate the noise from the power supply line and the noise which is coming from your device. So it will identify and buffer both the things properly. Otherwise, if you directly connect the power supply to the equipment, you will not understand the noise is because of power supply or because of your equipment. So that will be taken care of by LISN network. And you can go ahead for measuring the conducted and radiated emission with this arrangement. Okay, right. So again, we have designed one particular aluminum shield for this induction cooktop inside assembly also. And first we simulated in MATLAB. Again, we have taken length, breadth, and height, and thickness, and other things, right? So we again simulated that. That part I am not showing here. But these are the formulas again we are using for the shielding effectiveness and all. Now this is the internal view of the test model before shielding. You can see that there was no shielding inside. On the PCB is also open, and this is also open. So this was the inside view of that particular induction cooktop. This is a fan which is there. This fan also produces a lot of electromagnetic interference. Okay, so we have to use a nylon or silicon kind of things, or the metallic enclosures for the fans to minimize the radiation. Okay, now this is the observation table. Frequency versus radiated emission before shielding. So this is a scenario I have shown you before shielding. There was no shielding material used. So these are the radiation levels. Say at 30.32 megahertz, we have got 58.36 dB microvolt per meter, which was very high. E field, of course, as compared to the domestic standards. And then we have taken the radiations. Mostly the radiations are dominant at low frequency because it is a magnetic kind of equipment. So these are the dominant radiations at the low frequencies, as we can see. Okay. Now this is what we have done afterwards. We have enclosed the entire PCB assembly and other things in the copper aluminum enclosure. Of course, we cannot do anything about this copper foils. We cannot do anything about that. But yes, we try to enclose the things in the aluminum enclosure, and we have got a very good result improvement. So we can see afterwards, when we house that into the aluminum field, we have got reduction in the E field. So 58 to 40, almost 18 dB reduction. 56 to 31. So here it is more, even more than that. So average, we can see that around say 10 dBs to 20, 22 dB reduction in the radiated emission level when we have tested into the national laboratory like ETDC Pune. Okay. So this is the view after shielding, as we can see. This is aluminum shield which we have designed, first simulated in MATLAB and then implemented practically. Now this is a graph which we obtained from the radiated emission reading. So we can see CISPR standard is shown by this line. So this is a CISPR standard, as we can see. And after shielding, we have got a green graph. We can see after shielding, we have got a green. So still it is more than the radiated specified level of the standard. So still we have to work ahead and try to minimize the radiations, because this particular peak is still above the standard level. And when the shading was not there, then we have got the next, that is a blue color graph, as you can see here. So see here, this is how we have got the graph about the before shading. So still there is a lot of improvement. So we again implemented few other methods to, again we have retested that, and we try to curtail the radiation level below the standard level. So this is one very good practical case study I am showing you, and that too we have got a IEEE publication. So paper is available in IEEE Explorer. Okay. Then next part is a testing conducted emission, which is
Hello, sir. Excuse me,
yes,
sir. Sorry for disturbing.
yeah.
Sir, here the frequency you have given, no, sir, is it based on that loading? Like we have setting 100, 1000, maximum will be 1200 in that induction top. So
Yeah.
is that frequency which you have mentioned based on like whether we are fully utilizing highest level of cooking in induction cooker? Is it based on that, or what is that frequency?
No. Frequency is normally common in all testing chambers. It is starting from say 100 hertz to, it will either go for 1 gigahertz or it will go up to 10 gigahertz. That frequency you have to select according to the equipment category. Now, if this would have been wireless equipment, we would have to go on for 5 gigahertz or more. But this is a power electronic equipment, so 1 gigahertz is more than sufficient. That is what we can see. Okay, so again there is a standard specifies what kind of frequencies you have to test. Okay, so this is a power equipment, and it will be basically for low frequency side. You have to concentrate on low frequency side for this. Okay, so this is how,
sir. So are we applying this frequency radiation, or
no. These are the frequencies radiated by the device, and the antennas are measuring that frequency. That is what is there.
Okay, sir. Okay. Yes,
okay,
sir.
and what you are saying is the reverse way. When we test it for radiated susceptibility, then we inject these frequencies on the equipment and see how the equipment performs. Okay. So this is radiated emission. Yes, there are 4 or 5 antennas inside the chamber. Antenna is having the frequency band, so every antenna will collect the signal from the device. That is what it is happening. And then electromagnetic test receiver will combine all these things and give a plot like this. Okay.
Yes, sir. Understood, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Now, nextly, we are going for conducted emission. So I told you this is a free space radiated emission measurement. But when we have gone for the conducted emission, we are connecting some cable also to the this induction cooktop. So the cable also radiates some radiation. So it is our duty to measure the radiation from the cable, and that is what we call conducted emission. So we again using the same setup. Then LISN network we have used for isolation of the power noise and the device noise. And this is LISN diagram, which is a standard available diagram. So put your power supply through LISN to the equipment for isolation of the noise and the ground. Okay, so this is EMI receiver, which is outside the chamber, that will sum up all the radiation coming from the device, maybe through space or maybe through cable. So this is a standard block diagram of a EMI receiver. So 3IF, 4IF kind of receiver which will measure the radiation coming from the device. Okay, so this is a picture of that EMI test receiver. So it can measure peak, Quasi and the average values of the radiation, which is kept normally outside the chamber or the GTM cell, and that will summarize and put the graph, and you will get the graphs directly, or you will get Excel file. You can put in Excel file into MATLAB, and you will get the graphs on the screen. Okay. So conducted emission basically is done. Again, the limit is decided, low frequency and high frequency by a standard. So you have to measure, you have to connect the cable to the LISN, and the LISN will directly measure your conducted emission coming from the equipment. So see, this is a graph. Now, the lower value is around, say, 1 hertz, and the higher value is 30 megahertz. So all domestic standards says that you have to measure the radiation from a domestic equipment from 1 hertz to 30 megahertz. If you go to industry, you have to go up to 108 megahertz. If you go to defense, you have to go to 10 gigahertz. So this is the conducted emission level. Now see here, the red color is a standard value of the limit, and see, lot of excursions are made here by conducted emission which are going above the standard value. Okay, so you will see that a lot of radiations, especially 1 megahertz and in the vicinity of that 100 kilos to 1 megahertz, it is showing above the threshold standard limit of the average value, as you can see, red color graph. So this is showing that the equipment is not compatible with the domestic standards of EMI/EMC CISPA 25. So induction plate is not compatible by its own way of design. So this is giving a lot of radiation on the cable. So this is conducted emission. So we identified the frequency where it is going, and then we have designed the filter. So we propose a RFI filter, radio frequency interference filter, which will curtail the noise or the radiation at that frequency, and then we will again resubject the test for the conducted emission. So we have designed this filter. Now I am not explaining the design, but this is a filter which we have designed. This is the standard configuration of the filter, and you have got the common mode and differential mode components, and you have to have the mathematical calculations for calculating these values. Ultimately, we have got the values as X capacitor. This is X capacitor. These are the Y capacitors as 0.1 microfarad and 3000 picofarad. Inductance L is at 28 millihenry, and T is here, and that is 1 millihenry. There is a standard formula and mathematical, you can say, design for this filter. What frequency we have taken? We have taken the frequency where these graphs are crossing the values. For example, see here, especially this zone, say around say 500 kilohertz to around say 10 megahertz, around 10 megahertz. So we have to design a filter in such a way that this will take care of all this radiated emission which are going through cable, that is we call conducted emission. Okay, so after this filter was implemented in power supply section, so you have to connect line neutral here and ground here, and then it will be above that, ahead of this will be your equipment. So we have implemented power supply filter, RFI filter, that will take care of whatever conducted emission we have seen. After this, again we have taken the reading. Now see, so you can see that almost everywhere the readings are now coming below the specified value of the standard of the conducted emission. See, what was earlier graph, you can see, just a minute, sorry. Yeah, this was earlier graph. You can see that especially this window, it's very, very high radiation, conducted emission. So we try to curtail that by using simple design of RFI filter. Now see here. But still, you will find that a lot of perks are here at the high frequency side, 30 megahertz or something like that. So again, we have to rework this filter. It's not, this is first stage only I am showing you. So later on, we have to again rework the filter, redesign the filter, so that the radiations which are just crossing here, peak values, that we have to curtail. So this is how the research will go on. In one sitting, you cannot complete the compatibility requirements. we'll have to go for further analysis and detailing. Again, you have to retest it in the lab and see that all the peaks are below the rate standard value. Okay. So this is, you can say, the conclusion of the first case study, that conducted emission level was reduced by 15 to 20 dB after RFI filter, but still it was not sufficient in some high frequency area like here. So again, we have to rework on that. Okay. And then the radiated emission level was quite there in 30 to 80, 38 to 80 megahertz band, and we can reduce we have reduced it by around 10 to 15 dB. Again, some small rework may be required here, and we have worked on that. So these things are available on IEEE Explorer paper. We have got a paper on this, and which was published in a core conference on electromagnetic compatibility and interference. So we visited Bangalore. INSEMIC, the name of the conference is INSEMIC. It happens every 2 years, where only EMIMC papers are published. So this is first part of the case study. Now the remaining two, that is radiated emission and radiated susceptibility and conducted susceptibility. So again, we have to go back and see the chamber. Now this is a chamber, as we can see. Okay. Okay, so we have kept this equipment into chamber. Now what we have to do with the antenna in the chamber, we have to radiate the high frequency field on this equipment, like starting from 100 kilohertz to around 1 gigahertz. So we have done that. And after doing that, we have to verify, is there any parametric impairment? Is there any kind of functional impairment on the system? So we could not find anything, because this is a power system, right? And it has to only hit, that is the only function. But if it is some other system like a microcontroller based or some kind of processor based system, definitely it will impact on that, and it will produce the garbage on the LCD display. So you take any other microprocessor or controller based system inside the chamber and radiate high electromagnetic field on that, so you will find that a lot of garbage will come on display. So it will basically impact your data, right? So this is what is there. But since this is a microwave, this is a electrical induction cooktop, nothing has happened to this, because its function is only to hit the equipment, hit the particular thing. So radiated susceptibility has not much concern about this equipment. Similarly, conducted susceptibility, yes, we also conducted that, and we try to launch the spikes of 100 volt and 1 microsecond duration through the cable. But there is inside already a protection done by the the surge arresters and the metal oxide variators, which are already on the PCB. So that will take care of this transients and the surges. So nothing was much more concern about the radiated and conducted susceptibility. But what concern was radiated emission and conducted emission. That part already we have shown you. Okay. Now second part basically is we are going to take is a SMPS. So electromagnetic compatibility of an energy efficient switch mode power supply. And its comparison with the CISPR EMI standard. So the aim of research work is to highlight the importance of energy efficiency and the electromagnetic compatibility in our day-to-day life. That was the objective. So the energy efficiency, all of you know, the energy efficiency can be described as a reduced or less amount of energy using for the same work. Okay, and energy efficiency has got a lot of impact on the commercial point of view also, right? So this is a good example, normal bulb and the CFL lamp. So we try to conserve a lot of power here. We'll have to save a lot of power, right? And it has got direct impact on the billing of that. Okay, so this is the energy efficiency concept. I'm not going to go into the details of that. And you try to use the natural resources also as many as you can for minimizing the wastage of the energy. That is what the current trend is going on. So EMIMC is also playing a lot of role in that particular thing. So you know the comparison between linear power supply and the SMPS. Linear power supply has got a lot of it has got very poor efficiency, And the SMPS has got very better efficiency, 80%, 90% and more. A continuous DC regulated power supply has got very poor efficiency. And that's the reason why computer and the televisions and a lot of wireless equipments, they are using SMPS, switching mode power supply. So SMPS has got switching frequency, and that switching frequency is an area of concern for the EMI-MC. Okay. So we have taken one switching linear mode power supply, normally 100 volt AC to 240 volt AC, whereas SMPS can operate anywhere between the range of the voltage which is given, and it has got a very good efficiency, more than 80%. So we can identify one such SMPS for a case study, and so we have done that, right? So this is a working of SMPS. So everybody knows how it works and how the switching frequency is generated and how exactly the power is coupled, DC power is coupled to the output world. So, okay. So the main point here is of discussion is energy efficiency. So when we try to maximize the efficiency of any power system, EMI issues will be also optimized. That is what is there. So for SMPS, we have got 90% or above efficiency. So we can take it as a case study, and we try to analyze what kind of, you can say interference or what kind of EMI issues it is creating in radiated bay and conducted bay. Okay. So what we have done, we have taken one SMPS, which is creating a lot of unwanted radiation in free space, as well as it is creating a lot of unwanted radiation on the conducted cables. And we try to analyze we try to investigate the performance of the SMPS. Okay. So in this research work, we have taken one SMPS, which is currently used in the wireless communication system, and that was giving the 12 volt 5 ampere output at 60 watt power rating, and with switching frequency of 15 kilohertz and efficiency as high as 90%. So we have taken this as a module for research work, and we try to analyze how much interference it is giving, what are the levels, and how the levels are coping with the EMI-MC standards. Okay. So this is again same laboratory we have used in ETDC Pune, a national test lab, Government of India STQC laboratory, and we try to take the SMPS inside that lab and try to test it again as a part of the research work. Okay. Now these are the standard levels of the CISPR 25 for Class A and Class B limits for the any equipment which is in the category of domestic, commercial or industrial environment. Okay. And second one, we also tested conducted emission. So again, we require same EMI receiver and LISN network. Okay, the same setup what we have done for the last case study. So this was the same setup which we have used for the last case study. Right. So all these things will be same. LISN and other things will be same. Test receiver will be same for radiated emission as well as conducted emission. So that will give you the graph directly, and then you can compare that with the standard values, and then you can go for implementation. Okay, now again, we have to implement the methodology, like we have to design the filter according to the radiations which we have found in the conducted emission, and we have to design the enclosures or the mesh design for SMPS for reducing the radiated emission. So this filter we have designed after investigating the conducted emission, and again we have designed the different RFI filter for a particular environment of the SMPS. So this filter has been put into the power supply section, and after that we have got a lot of improvements in the conducted emission level. Okay, so yeah, and one more thing which is mostly used in the RFI filter is a common mode choke. This is a very specially designed electromagnetic component. So we have used this particular thing in as a part of choke or inductance in our RFI filter. Okay, and similarly we have used the specially required X and Y capacitors, differential mode and common mode capacitors in a filter And these are also very high profile capacitors, which are intendedly for the EMI and EMC issues. And of course, these are the things which we can use in the design. So these are the components which are specially recommended for EMI/EMC issues. Okay. Now, testing part, what we have done. So this is the equipment. As you can see, this is the equipment, and then we have got conducted analysis, conducted emission measurement of SMPS. So this is a graph now. You will see. So this is before filtering. So it starts from 0.15 megahertz and it ends up to 30 megahertz. So you'll see the conducted emission given by the SMPS. See here. Now this is a crossing very heavily in the low frequency area. And also some radiation component are crossing the specified limit for switching frequency of the SMPS also. Only here it is giving you the safe value, as we can see here. Okay, so this is the first investigation which we have done for a conducted emission. And then these are the values. So now you see that the values which are bold, black, they are crossing the limits. At 0.1520 megahertz, actual value should be maximum should be 66 dB microvolt, where it is crossing 74.87 dB microvolt. Similarly, you will find a lot of couple of values which are crossing the standard radiated emission as a conducted emission limits. So this is the first investigation without any filter. Okay. Now we have gone with the filter now. So we have designed the filter already. I have shown you the filter, and we have designed it, and you will find that now all the values are coming below the standard specified limit, except some small, but a small part is going above here. So that also we have to take care in the next permutation and combination of the technology and techniques which we are implementing. So this is the first run of the research after the implementation of the filter, and you will find a lot of improvement in the results of the conducted emission. So you'll find that lot
Sir,
of yeah.
Sir, why are there two limits, sir?
There are two limits because one is a broadband, one is a narrow band. Okay. Any test receiver measures the values in the broadband or the narrow band. Okay. So broadband is like an average limit, and narrow band is like a peak limit. That's why there are two standards. That's why there are two standards.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yeah. Now this is the you can see after filtering. So you will see that every radiation was below 66 dB microvolt. So all the things we can say successfully implemented. No component, no part of this conducted emission was above the standard threshold value, except some small thing here, and that we have taken care by using some other technique. Okay, but otherwise all these conducted emission levels were below the standard limit of the EMI/EMC 6/25 standard for SMPS. Okay, so this you have to do in positive signal and negative signal both. Conducted emission has to be done in positive signal and negative signal both. So the filter has to be implemented in positive circuit and negative circuit both. Okay, depending upon the requirement. This is only shown for the positive circuit. So this is the first investigation of conducted emission. Then we have gone for the radiated emission. So the radiated emission, you can see again the GTM cell we have used, which is a gigahertz transverse electromagnetic cell, and the output of GTM cell is basically connected to the EMI test receiver, which already photograph I have shown, and then we can directly get either graph or we'll get the Excel file from which you can plot it on the MATLAB and you can analyze the results. Okay. Now the mitigation techniques, what we have used is a filtering, cabling, shielded cables, and shielding enclosure or shielding mesh, aluminum mesh we try to use with the SMPS or as a part of the mitigation technique. These are some of the techniques already we have implemented in the design. Okay. And we have used some capacitive decoupling in the circuit board so that whatever the radiations we were getting initially, we can just curtail those radiations to the specified limit, right? So again, we first designed the aluminum enclosure and we simulated aluminum mesh enclosure. We tried to simulate it in the MATLAB, and then accordingly we got the results, right? So this is the measurement of SMPS in the GTM cell, as we can see. So the equipment was under GTM cell. We have put it under that, and this is a pictorial view of that. And then we also apply the aluminum mesh over and above that particular SMPS, a simple fine mesh of aluminum that gives us a lot of improvements in the radiated emission. Okay, so now you can see these are the values of the radiated emission before aluminum mesh shielding and after aluminum mesh shielding. So at 31.92 megahertz, 60.18, that was the observation. And what was the limit? Limit was 50 dB microvolt per meter. But still, with aluminum mesh, we have got 52.33. Still, it is high. So these first two readings, still we could not compile, or we could not comply with the EMIMC requirements. Okay, rest of the things, yes, we have reduced it to great extent. But here we have to rework again for aluminum mesh design. And so we have done that, right? So this is a graph. You will see that this is a plot given by EMIMC receiver. So this is a standard value of green color is standard value of EMIMC standard. And here exactly we are still having more than specified values. So you will see that the red color graph is before you can say shielding, aluminum mesh shielding, and the green color is blue color is after aluminum mesh shielding. So this is what the results we have obtained, right? So yeah, so these are the two observations which we have plotted, as you can see in the window, and CISPA standard before shielding and after shielding. So some kind of satisfactory curtailation of the emission we could do it, but still there was a scope of improvement here. So second iteration we had to work, and then only we could reduce the radiation below 50 dB microvolts per meter. Okay, so the conclusion of the second part was that filtering technique gave us a reduction in the conducted emission from 15 to 20 dB, and the aluminum mesh shielding gave us the radiated emission reduction from 10 to 15 dB. But in both the cases, the criteria was not satisfied for some small part of the frequency. So again, we have to go for some other technique for reducing that particular radiation level. So I think this is how we can do. And now about the radiated susceptibility and conducted susceptibility, we also perform the same test also on the SMPS also, but nothing much worried or nothing so concerned about that test because it is basically giving you the power supply. Only we have found some small kind of RF noise when we inject the RF noise to the cable. So again, the filter is already positioned, so that filter will take care of that RF noise. So the RF noise will be grounded to the thing of the body or chassis ground, and so no further complications can be seen on the SMPS. However, if it is a wireless system or it is a microprocessor or controller based system, then by injecting this radiated emission through the cable or through the space, it will have some impact on the parameters. Like you will get some garbage on the LCD display, or you will get some kind of parametric variations. So that kind of things can be observed, which we have observed much more in wireless communication system, like a vehicular systems. However, in power systems, the most two important things are radiated emission and the conducted emission. These are the two things which are mostly important in all the power systems. But if your equipment is going to be in defense, or if the equipment is going to be in the industrial communication standards, you have to take all the 4 tests on the equipment, and then only you will say that it is basically complying to the EMIMC environment. So all the test laboratory will give you certificate that your equipment is compatible with for radiated emission with CISPA 25 standard for so and so category, or with conducted emission with CISPA 25 standard for so and so category. And these levels will be most stringent in the defense standards. Like defense has also got 3 categories: Army standard, Navy standards, and the Air Force standards. Okay, so it is very stringent for defense communication purposes or defense standard purposes. So the power electric systems which are in defense, you need to take a lot of care, and you need to take a lot of design, you can say focus on the design to get the equipment clear in the defense EMIMC standards. So I think this is the second case study which I have explained. These are the references which uh, we can use for the most Bible of this EMIMC is a Henry W. Ott. The book called Henry W. Ott, Noise Reduction Techniques, Electronic Systems. So this is a Bible of this all electromagnetic interference and compatibility. You will get everything discussed in that book. Okay. Second one is of course the Tim Williams EMC product design. This is second book which is very important. And then over and above that, a lot of research papers, a lot of application notes are available, a lot of equipment notes are available by the test laboratories like ARAI, then ETDC Pune and ERTL West and other things. Okay, then CISPR 25 sorry, CISPR 25 standard, then EMIMC MIL 461B standard, then ARAI, ETDC and GIC lab manuals which are available, or which are available as a reference part of the work to be continued in the particular domain. So these are the references which we can take. Now these are the publications by us with my ME and PhD students. So I got around 55 papers in the journals and the conferences, out of which to name few are available in the SCI Index and Scopus journal, like wireless personal communication. So we have got 2-3 papers in SCI Index and Scopus journal. So one is study of radiated emission from wireless positioning system and strategies to minimize that. This is available in the International Journal of Wireless Personal Communication by Spinger, which is Web of Science and Scopus Index. Similarly, conducted emission, one more paper in the same journal. And rest of the papers are also available in some other journals, as we can see. And one more paper in a Scopus Index journal, and that is IET Journal of Research, which is analyzing and mitigating near-field radiation from PCB of vehicle tracking system, which is available in IET National Journal of Research. So many papers in journals, and there are a lot of conferences in the electromagnetic compatibility which are happening every year. INSEMIC is a society in India, which is IEEE EMIMC society. We work with IEEE EMIMC society. So we have published a lot of papers in that conferences. So INSEMIC, that is called as a basically international conference on the electromagnetic interference and compatibility. So we have published a lot of papers in that conferences, and only EMIMC papers are published in that particular conferences, which are organized by EMIMC Society of India and IEEE EMIMC Society at international level. So a lot of papers we have got with my publication with the students and this. So I'm really thankful to a few of the organizations like ARAI, because I'm really grateful to them. They have always given me the facility without any charge, and that is what is most so important about research work, because otherwise if you take 25,000, 50,000 per day, I think anybody cannot afford that at our level. So whenever I requested for my students, they have already given facility. ETDC also same thing. COIP is my, you can say, mother organization where I have done my PhD. My PhD is also in EMIMC area. So I'm thankful to COIP and Pune University, right? Similarly, Institution of Electronics and Telecom Engineers, then IEEE, a lot of conferences were organized by these people, Society of EMC Engineers, where I am the member. A lot of private companies also help us, like General Industrial Control and Mir Enterprises, where they have got some EMIMC test facility. I'm thankful to my own college, institution, D.Y. Patil Institute of Technology, always supporting me for research work, and my ME and PhD students who are working in this area. So some part of the research which they have done, with their consent, I have already taken some few results in that. We have done one more case study for microwave oven also, but because of the time constraint, it is not possible to show that. And a lot of improvements can be done in the microwave ovens also. for curtailing the radiated emission about that. Lastly, I'm thankful to the organization, Robotics Institute of Technology, the principal, the convener of this AICT Atal FDP workshop. Also thankful to the head of the department, electrical, and other head of the departments and other faculty members who really work hard for making this particular FDP as a great success. Because I know that we rank at 172 in NRF ranking in our institution. So we also organize a lot of workshops and events. So we know how much it is challenging work to organize these kind of things. So thankful to all of you, madam. Thankful to all of you also. And now I think if anybody is having any question, we can answer the questions. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. We were hooked to the screen for the past 1.5 hours.
Pardon, madam.
Thank you for that wonderful session. We were hooked to the screen.
So nice of you. So nice of you. And I'm also thankful to my one of the best friend, Dr. Takle, who is from IIT Bombay, who also works in AMIMC area, and who is my motivator basically.
Okay.
So any questions?
So, yes. Participants, if you have any doubts.
Hello, sir. Sir, you have said that that mostly these radiations are emitted, but even though they are emitted, they don't interfere mostly with the other devices. So if I have two microwave ovens operating, so they won't interact with each other. Those radiations won't interact, but they will emit radiation which might be harmful maybe for the humans or users.
Yes, yes. No, that is okay. But suppose nearby microwave oven, if you keep some wireless equipment, definitely it will going to impact that. Okay, microwave oven cannot interfere with microwave oven, right? That's why I have said power electric systems, the first two elements are critical: radiated emission and conducted emission, right? If it is wireless microprocessor based any equipment, if you keep very close to that, you will find that the lot of hampering in the parameters and the data flow of that equipment that is happening. So microwave oven will not impact microwave oven because both are working at very high power level, and there is no impact of that radiation on second microwave oven probably. But yes, if it is some sensitive wireless equipment you have kept nearby to that, definitely it will have some impact on that. So radiated emission impact on the especially the wireless and the small voltage equipments. That is what is there.
Okay, sir. Sir, I had another doubt. Since we are talking about radiated emission and all, we have a lot of devices. You had also mentioned about cell towers and all. So suppose if I'm using mobile hotspots or mobile chargers, charging a phone, microwaves, laptops, etc. Is there any safe distance which I have to maintain so that I am not affected by it?
Yeah. It's a good question. Actually, we have worked in one of my project was to measure the radiation from mobile phones and the Wi-Fi hotspots. That paper also is available in IEEE Explorer. So we have got cell tower radiation from the various thing and what is the impact. So that also research work we have carried out. Now about mobile phone, normally there is a SAR value which is specified. Okay, specific absorption rate. Okay, now if we purchase mobile from a gray market, definitely the SAR value of that mobile phone will be more. Okay, so in that case, it will be very dangerous. Now you must be knowing my ideal Dr. Girish Kumar from IIT Bombay. He has designed one small chip which is to be kept inside your pocket that will basically save you from the impact of the mobile phone radiations. Right? So he has got a lot of research work in that particular area. So mobile phone, yes, it also gives a lot of radiation. So what we have done in our study, we have measured the mobile radiation from 25 different models of different manufacturers. Only thing is that we could not publish that in a IEEE because we cannot publish with the names, because otherwise it will have some legal impacts. It will have some legal impacts. But I have got the results with me. And many of the gray market models are giving a lot of radiation which are very, very beyond the standard value limits. And that's why it is said that you should not use mobile for a continuous 8 hours or more than that. Okay, so you purchase a mobile from a very white market, which has got very optimum SAR value, and that will radiate very less radiation as compared to the gray market equipments. So that is the most important thing. And secondly, don't use it for a continuous time, 8 hours or 10 hours. So that will be very dangerous to human being. You know, it gives the thyroid gland problem, it gives the heart problems, it gives the brain tissue issues, the tumors and the cancers. But there is no 1:1 relation which is proved. Somebody is saying this is happening, somebody is saying this is happening, and that's why the majority of industry oppose the things which people are working in this area. They don't accept that. Even cell towers are put on the top of the residences, which is not actually good one. So Girish Kumar sir is really hats off to him. He has done a lot of study on this particular topic.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I had a basic doubt. Why this is measured in dB microvolt?
Yeah, radiated emission is measured in dB microvolts per meter. Actually, it is a field strength. Okay, it is a field strength. It is a field strength. I just show you the formula that time when I show you the spectrum analyzer first thing. It is a standard unit of EMI/MC. Okay, E field is measured in dB microvolts per meter. It is a field strength. I will just show you that again, so that yeah, this one. Now you can see here. What voltage you are observing on the spectrum analyzer is in microvolts, or it is in dBm power. That you need to convert into field strength by using the standard formula using antenna factor. This is a microwave theory. So E field is always measured in dB microvolt per meter, and H field is measured in dB microampere per meter. It is a field strength basically with respect to meter. That's why it is like that. Okay.
And it has no relation to rate of change of current and rate of change of voltage. Time factor will not come into picture.
Which one?
Time factors, sir. Rate of change of current, rate of change of voltage.
No, it is not coming into picture right now. You can see here, this is a table I have shown you. Now this is VSA, dB microvolt. You are observing at, this is madam one time reading only. This is manual reading which we are taking in the spectrum analyzer. Okay. So you can see here, this is what is the microvolt we are observing on spectrum analyzer, or it's actually we have observed dBm, then we converted into mm microvolt, then we have converted into dB microvolts, and then you can find out using this formula, you can directly find out the E field and H field and the power density. So it is a standard units for that, dB microvolt per meter and dB microampere per meter for H field. And this is an antenna factor which you need to take into account in doing the calculations. Every antenna, every probe of EMI/MC has got antenna factor. So this, because of the antenna factor unit is dB microampere per meter per microvolt, the units of E and H field will come that way. Okay.
Sir, one more doubt. Why is the interference dominant at low frequency?
Interference is dominant in these power electronic systems at low frequency because most of the things, the magnetic fields are produced by the low frequency area, like power equipments. And if you go to wireless equipments, if I have shown you the wireless equipment radiated emission, it is dominant in the high frequency side because it is electrostatic interference. But most of the power equipments, even the metro lines which are running, they are giving magnetic interference. So they are dominant at low frequency side.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Any other question?
I think somebody has raised their hand. Bhagyashri, you want to ask something? Hello?
Hello, participant, any doubt?
Hello, sir.
Yes,
sir, so normally can we say that a wired equipment is better than wireless equipment due to that radiation and all?
Yes, but wired equipment use a lot of conducted noise. You know, I have read one article in which there are 150 computers installed in a hall, right? And these computers
Okay.
are throwing a lot of conducted noise to the cable. So these cables are, these 150 computers, they are giving the conducted noise on the cable of the power supply. And what happened is that the neutral was lifted to plus 5 volts instead of 0 because of this conducted noise. Normally the
Okay.
voltage between neutral and earth should be 0. But the
See.
because of this conducted noise, the neutral voltage was showing plus 5 volts, which is dangerous to other equipments. So it is not necessarily said true that wired equipments will be always better than these equipments. But yes, for radiated emission, you can say it is better.
Okay, okay, sir. Sir, one more doubt. Like this conducted noise, can we interrelate with the harmonics produced due to this
Yes,
nonlinear
yes,
loads,
yes,
whatever
yes,
we are?
yes, 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 exactly, exactly. So when we measure
Okay.
conducted noise now, it will be fundamental and the multiple harmonics of the basic frequency. Right, like
Ah,
50
okay.
hertz,
Yes, sir.
50 hertz, 100 hertz, 200 hertz, 300 hertz, or if SMPS is having some switching frequency, so 500
Correct,
kilohertz,
correct.
1 megahertz, like that. Yes, it is like that only. It is like that only.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Okay. Sir, so suppose if we are using power filters on the distribution side near where the transformer is situated, it will have large neutral currents. Suppose if we are using a filter, maybe then there won't be any problem, like power filter, shunt active power filters and all.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, 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 yeah. It is okay, but it is better to put the filter in your equipment rather than keeping the filter in the MSCB side or transformer side, because it will be a very huge design requirement. Instead of that, you put, normally you see that even if you see the laptop, there is a filter of the cable on the cable. Have you seen that? Because my
Yes, sir.
laptop,
Ferrite B.
that is a filter actually. That is a filter for
Okay.
minimizing conducted emission. एक जार करके होता है
Yes,
ना
sir.
ऐसा केबल को.
Correct, sir. Okay. Okay.
So that is, so better try to minimize the conducted emission at your equipment level instead of going at the central level. But yes, central level also you can think of, but then there will be a lot of challenges for that to maintain that, and to have the regularity of that particular thing. It will be difficult task for the central level point of view. Voltage levels are high, power levels are high, so it will be challenge.
Yes, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, yeah, welcome.
Okay. So thank you, sir, for accepting our invitation and for giving detailed insight into the EMI, EMC, sources of EMI in power electronic system, techniques to reduce EMI, case studies which really help to understand EMI issues. EMI standards lab setup to observe EMI will be helpful for project and research work. It was really interactive and informative session, sir. Once again, we will like to express our gratitude to Professor Dr. Srinivas Zo for conducting this session. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you organizers. You have given us a lot of opportunity here to yeah. So thank you very much, and thank you organizers, because
Thank you so
I
much, sir.
really love to talk on this EMIMC field.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much, sir. Thank you so much for spending your time here and giving us a wonderful talk.
Yes, madam. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I am in college only right now.
Oh.
Okay, madam. Can I take your leave?
Yes, yes, sir. Thank you. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Abhishek sir.